Hey, welcome to Branches. Good morning. How are we doing today? We doing good? All right. Hey, it's good to be here. We all weathered the storm together. So we weathered the winter storm. We've weathered life storms together. It's just good to be together. It's good to do life together. So thanks for being here. It's good to be in person. For those of you online, thanks for joining us online as well. You're part of the family. We're all part of a family, and it's a really cool thing to be doing life together. And today, we are starting a brand new series called Bystander. We'll get into that a little bit. You'll have to put up with me for a little longer later in the service. But really excited about this brand new series, and just, again, really excited to be doing church together in the community we live, loving our community. And I actually want to share a quick story. There's a lot of things that kind of go on in the background at Branches during the week that we don't always get the opportunity to hear about or know about, or even the opportunity to share. And something just yesterday happened that I thought was really cool that we could share, because again, we've got a church here, a church who really loves our community and wants to partner with our community and serve our community well. And some of that happened just yesterday. This is just one example of a group of volunteers from Branches who partnered with an organization that we partnered with a couple years ago for Be Rich called Michelle's Love. Michelle's Love is an organization that serves single parents who are going through cancer treatment. They serve them in all different kinds of ways, whether it's financial assistance or just a physical need that they have, grocery shopping, cleaning their houses. Just a really cool organization who serves this really tight, small, narrow window that people just don't think about or even realize that people are struggling with. So yesterday, 7 volunteers from Branches partnered with Michelle's Love to move a single mom and her family who Michelle's Love supports. And so it took about an hour and a half, but 7 people from Branches went and just served that mom and served alongside an organization who's doing amazing things. And so I just thought it'd be awesome to celebrate that together this morning and just say, man, how cool is that we're loving our community? So I just want to say thanks for being that kind of church. Thanks for being that kind of group. Thanks for being that kind of community. And I look forward to just sharing more stories like that, because that's just one of many. So super cool. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us by showing up and supporting us by just being a part of our community. If there's a desire in your heart to begin or even continue supporting us financially, you can give any of your tithes, offerings, and donations into one of the red boxes in the Commons. That's there for you to partner with us, and we appreciate that so we can continue doing what we're doing here in our community. And so that's a really cool thing and a cool way for you to partner with us as well. Now, today, like I said, we're starting a brand new series called Bystander. This series is going to lead us into Easter, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into that and before we get into our content, we have an opportunity to just stand up and sing together and worship God together. So the band is going to take it away from here. Let's stand together.
All right, I hope everybody brought their singing voices this morning, because we're going to sing out, we're going to sing loud. We got words on the screen for you. Come on, let's worship our God this morning. Oh, I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and you put me back together. Now every desire is now satisfied. Oh, here in your love. Come on, church, sing it out. There's nothing. And oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, or my failures and flaws. But you see them all, and you still call me friend. Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Oh, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. No, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, I know it's true. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Come on, let's sing this out and proclaim, you turn my morning. Hey! You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn my mourning. Hey! You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. Yes, you do. You turn shame into glory. Hey, you're the only one who can. You're turning grace. You turn grace into gardens. Hey, you turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. And oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Lord, there's nothing, I know. Oh, nothing is better than you. Oh, come on, I'll sing it out. There's nothing. And oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, you turn my morning into. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty than you. Oh, there's nothing is better than you. Oh, come on, let's lift him up in this place. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Lord, there's nothing is better than you. Come on, sing, I lay my burdens. I lay my burdens down. My yoke is easy now. What a friend I found in you. Come on, let's sing that again. I lay my burdens. Lay my burdens down. My yoke is easy now. What a friend I found in you. 'Cause you're the well that won't run dry, and only you can satisfy. Through every season of my life, oh, you are the well that won't run dry. Hey! Come on, sing out with me. I will thirst no more, and I will thirst no more, 'cause you refresh my soul. Living waters flow from you. 'Cause you're the well, 'cause you're the well that won't run dry, and only you can satisfy. Through every season of my life, oh, you are the well that won't run dry. Come on, let's sing this out loud. We have freedom in Jesus' name. So come on, let's proclaim this morning. You have given me freedom. You have given me joy. You have taken my burden. Oh, you have given me freedom. You have given me joy. You've taken my burdens. You have given me. Oh, you have given me freedom. You have given me joy. You have taken my burdens. One last time. Oh, you have given me freedom. You have given me joy. You've taken my burdens. God, you're the well. 'Cause you're the well You know, I was watching this video the other day, just perusing through Instagram. And it's these trapeze artists as they're kind of like doing all these crazy flips and stuff in the air, which I am way too scared to ever do anything like that. But whenever they fall, they always have this net that they land in. And they have that net because they would die if they didn't have that. And I just kind of began to think a lot how being up in that crazy, swinging from poles to poles and all the different things, or even just jumping on a really big trampoline and all this stuff, how you kind of don't have a whole lot of control once you let go of that thing. You're just kind of at the mercy of gravity and physics and stuff that none of us really can control. And how scary that must be, and how it's kind of feeling like this past like year and a half has kind of been like that. I feel like 2019 we're kind of like letting go of that pole, and then all of a sudden we're like falling in midair. And then I just began to get really grateful that I have a soft foundation to fall back on. That no matter what happens or how crazy and how uncertain things get and how completely out of control everything is, I know that no matter what happens, I have a soft foundation that I can fall back on. And that's Jesus. And maybe you're here this morning and maybe you don't have that. And that's actually okay because you're here now. And I just believe that God has, I don't believe that you're here by an accident. I believe that if you're here this morning or if you're watching online this morning, I believe that you're here for a reason and that you're here for a purpose. And that's because there's a God in heaven who loves you. And he has been seeking you out and chasing you down. And he says that he is for you, not against you. And that he's given us an opportunity to be able to set our foundation on the rock, which is Jesus. So this morning, God, we just come to you, Lord, and I thank you so much that you are our foundation. God, that no matter what happens in life, no matter how crazy things get, God, I thank you that we can go to you. Lord, I thank you that nothing in this world can satisfy. God, I thank you that you are my only option. God, for eternal peace. God, for hope for tomorrow. God, I thank you that your strength can sustain us. Lord, and I thank you that you are available to us. God, that you tore the veil, Lord, that so that you could be with us. So this morning, God, I just pray that you come and speak to us. Lord, for you are worthy of all praise. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. You are worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Come on, let's sing his name this morning. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. You're worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. You are worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Yes, we do. Jesus, the name of Jesus, the name above every other name. Oh, Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You are worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And holy, oh, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And holy, oh, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. To those around me, God. To those around me, God. Come be glorified as we lift you up, God. Come on, let's proclaim this morning. Sing it out, I will build. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. And only there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
Good morning and welcome to Branches. We doing good? I'm back. So here we go. We are in a brand new series called Bystander, and super excited about this series. So if this is your first time, you're starting at the beginning of a series, which is awesome. If it's not your first time, thanks for coming back, and thanks for watching at home and being with us here today and inviting us into your living room. I think there's something really cool about that. We've been in your living room a few times, so maybe that's creepy. I don't know, but thanks for joining us. And this series, Bystander, like I said before, is going to carry us from now until Easter. It's a really exciting series, and we get to kind of journey with the disciple John to Jesus, and we get to kind of observe John's journey with Jesus through his account of Jesus' life. And so that's really what this series is going to be about. We're going to be walking through John's account of Jesus' life together over the next several weeks, leading all the way up until the celebration of Easter here. And it's going to be really exciting. So we're going on a journey together. It begins today. It ends at Easter, but it really has a lasting impact if we really recognize the meaning and the impact that Jesus' life, death, and resurrection has for us 2,000 years later. And in the midst of John's account of Jesus' life, John actually addresses a tension throughout the gospel that's very real for me, or at least has been very real for me in my life. Just so you know, I grew up in church. I was basically born in church. We always went to church. We did miss a couple Sundays for really important things like the Super Bowl and things like that. But grew up going to church. Definitely missed some Sundays or didn't have perfect attendance. But church was very much a part of my childhood and my upbringing. And so faith and Jesus and the gospel and all of that is just something that I'm pretty familiar with. Now, I know not everybody in the room or everybody watching or everybody who we encounter in life. That's not true for everyone. Not everyone grew up with the gospel or the Bible or faith or belief. Not everyone grew up with that being kind of foundational or something that we understood. And so I think it's really important to just recognize, hey, not all of us had that experience, and that's okay. What's so cool is that together today, we get to experience it, and we get to, over the next several weeks, walk through what that looks like and what that means. And we get to kind of see this tension that John addresses that might be very real for many of us, or has been real for many of us, even in the recent past. Now, growing up, like I said, in church, when I would encounter circumstances or situations or people that were difficult or less than ideal, I'd hear certain phrases often. I would hear phrases like, hey, you just got to believe. Hey, I don't know where my life's going or what decision I should make or what God's doing. And, the phrase, hey, just believe. Just believe. If you just believe, everything's going to be just fine. Or I'd come across, these conundrums in my head, like, hey, I understood this to be true. I thought this, but I've got this new information that's coming from somewhere, and I don't know how to, reconcile that. I see teenagers go through this a lot when they go off to college. How do I make this? How do I do this? And a lot of our answer is you just have to have more faith. Just have faith. And while those intentions are beautiful, I found for me, and this is my personal experience, and maybe it's not yours, but it's my personal experience, that there was a point in my life, that point was really, I'd probably call it adulthood, where just believe or just have faith didn't quite work. I know, you're like, wait a second, you're a pastor, you're on stage, you're not supposed to say that. But bear with me. Walk with me through this, because it just wasn't enough. I needed something more than just simply believe or just simply have more faith. I needed something more concrete than believe better and have more faith. I needed something more. What I really needed in those moments when I was struggling with addiction, in those moments where I was struggling with family tension, in those moments where I was struggling with my future and God, what do you have for me, and where do you want me to go, and what decision do you want me to make? In those moments, I needed more than just faith blindly or belief in something with no understanding. I needed to trust. I needed to be able to trust and have confidence in something that was concrete. Something like Josh was saying, I needed to have confidence that there was a net to catch me if I made a bad decision. I needed confidence that in something, or rather somebody, who I knew would be with me regardless. I had to move beyond, and many of us maybe need to do this, I had to move beyond just hoping in something, hoping that something would happen, or hoping that something would come along, or hoping that someone would rescue me. I had to move beyond hope, and I had to move into trust and confidence in something that was concrete, that I could count on. And what I know about us and what I know about humans is that we like to see things before we believe them. You've probably said that. I won't believe it till I see it. When I see it, I'll believe it. And that's a common thing for us. We want to see it before we believe it. Prove it. Show me some evidence. Show me why I should trust this. Show me why I should have faith. Show me, and then I'll believe. Because in the rest of the world, you remove the conversation from faith, and you remove it from religion. You remove it from church. And in the rest of the world, we believe things based on evidence. This is becoming very apparent right now in our world. We believe things based on the evidence that we find. And we also believe based on our confidence in the person giving the information. This is kind of conflicting right now in our world. But we believe things, we trust things, we have confidence in things based on the evidence that we see, based on the person, based on how much trust we have or the credentials of the person who's giving us the information. And there's been a few times, maybe in your life and in my life, where we've got conflicting information. We're like, ooh, what do we believe? What do we trust? What do we place our confidence in? And this is super important to recognize. Because faith, what I think is so dangerous is that oftentimes when faith and belief are dropped into the religion conversation, they take on a different context. They take on some special meaning oftentimes. And I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's even accurate. When dropped in the religious context, faith and belief don't have any special meaning. But often we run into this idea that religious faith and belief are often divorced from reason and confused with hope. That religious faith and belief are often divorced from reason and confused with hope. But I would argue, in my life, in my experience, hope is much different than belief. And hope is much different than faith. Hope is different than confidence in something that's concrete, that's assured, that's promised. It's much different. And there's a big difference, too. There's a big difference between by faith and because of faith. There's a huge difference between, hey, I'm going to make this decision or make this leap or understand the world in this way by faith versus because of the faith that I have in something that's assured, something that's concrete, something that's definite. And when we look at the people who followed Jesus, his disciples, or even specifically the disciple John, John followed Jesus. John had faith and trusted Jesus because of his faith, because of what he saw, because of what he witnessed, because of what he experienced by doing life with the person of Jesus. John followed Jesus because of what he saw. The disciples believed because they were there and they witnessed his power. They witnessed his teaching. They witnessed his love. They witnessed his mercy and heard his truth. They believed because of faith. They had faith because of what they saw. And then they wrote what they saw and what they experienced down. And 2,000 years later, it's been preserved by people risking their life because of their confidence in who it represented and what was done so that we could see it today. And through the next several weeks, we're going to be going through one of those accounts. It's known as the Gospel of John, right? It's written by the disciple John who did life with Jesus. And it's called the Gospel of John. It's not the gospel about John. It's the gospel according to John about the good news of Jesus. Gospel means good news. And John is writing about the good news about the fact that Jesus came to die on a cross, to save us from our sins, to take our place, to erase the debt that sin has accrued for us and take our place and pay that debt for us. That's the good news. And the Gospel of John, the good news of John about Jesus, was written in the early 90s. Now, I'm not talking about Backstreet Boys 90s, okay? I mean the 90s, the year 90. John was an interesting guy. He was the only one of Jesus' disciples to die of old age. The rest of them were killed or murdered or martyred for preaching the gospel, teaching the gospel, spreading the gospel. They tried to kill John. It didn't work. And he's the only one who lived a full life. He was the last of his friends to be alive. And towards the end of his life, in the early 90s, he was encouraged by the people who were following him, John's disciples. He was encouraged to write down his account of Jesus' life, to record his experiences with Jesus. They were saying, hey, John, you're an eyewitness. You've seen this thing happen. We have Matthew's account. We have Peter's account through Mark. We have Luke's account as he traveled and interviewed eyewitnesses. We have those. But John, you're the last one alive. Write this thing down. Share what you saw and what you experienced and what caused you to believe, what the catalyst of your faith. Share that now. Write it down. And what's so cool about this account that we're going to go through is that it was written well within a reasonable period of time from the actual events for us to actually trust it, right? Jesus lived during John's lifetime, and John, before he passed, wrote this stuff down. So it was close. It was just a few years after John experienced it. So he writes it down. And we're going to spend the next several weeks walking through what John saw Jesus doing and who John saw and what John saw Jesus to be. And remember, he writes this down because he was there. He witnessed it. And so before we jump in, I want to start actually where John ends. Because at the very end of his account of Jesus' life, of his gospel, John kind of states the purpose. This is the purpose statement for the entire book, for the entire account that he writes down. It's the filter, it's the thesis statement for all of what we're going to walk through, all of what we're about to read, and all of what we're about to study. And in John chapter 20, John writes his thesis statement, and it says this. It says, Jesus performed many other signs. We'll get back to that word in a second. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. Now, when you hear book, don't think Bible. Think the account that John is writing. Many other signs were performed that I haven't written down, is what John's saying. But these are written. This is the thesis. This is the purpose. This is our filter. But these signs, these wonders, these things are written, why? That you may believe. Not to record the events, not to record even just Jesus' teachings, although those things are important. But John wrote them down that you, that me, that we may believe. John is telling us why we should believe. Why we should believe what, though, John? I wrote these down that they're written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that Jesus is the Savior, that Jesus is the guy he said he was, that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, that Jesus claims about himself ought to be taken seriously, that we may believe that he is who he said he is. And the result, John says, that by believing that he's the Messiah, that he's the Son of God, by believing you may have life, that you may have life in his name, which is tied to eternal life, to life abundantly, to life beyond this one. And what John's about to do over the course of the next several chapters from the very beginning of his account of Jesus is he's about to walk us through a sequence of that brings us to faith and brings us to belief. It's the same sequence that the disciples walked through. It's the same sequence that many of us have or are currently walking through. And the sequence looks a little bit like this. John records some events that happened in a period of time. And those events, as we look at them deeper and John begins to talk about them, those events, we recognize that they're not just a moment in time or a moment of generosity on Jesus' part, but that they're actually signs. That these events, these moments, these things that happen, they're a sign that point to something. In fact, they point to evidence. Evidence that Jesus is exactly who he claimed to be. And that evidence, those signs, those events, when they're smashed together, they result in belief. And after belief has taken root in our heart, we then can begin to trust in the person of Jesus and the goodness of our Father in heaven. And as you read the Gospels, any of them, and you look at the disciples, You look at how they've wrestled. You can see them wrestle through this sequence. There's an event that's more meaningful than just the moment, and then there's some evidence, and then they're struggling to believe. They're wondering, is he really who he says he is? And there's times of extraordinary belief in the disciples' life, and there's times of extraordinary disbelief in certain seasons and in certain moments. There's times of strength in their faith, and there's times of weak faith in Jesus' disciples. And they're sitting there with him, walking through this sequence, struggling with this thing. And as they witness who Jesus is, they're still going, man, there's some evidence. There's some signs. There's some belief. And now I'm beginning to trust. So John organizes his entire gospel around some specific events, actually. He organizes them around some specific events, and these events are significant. Really, these events eventually turn in and are obvious that they are signs that provide evidence that turn to belief and result in trust. And he organizes his gospel around 7 of these events, and he calls them signs. So through John, through this series, through Bystander, we're going to look at these 7 signs that John records, that Jesus performs, that are more than just a moment. And as we read them, you may think, why signs? Why is John calling them signs? Because as we read about these 7 signs, you may go, I've heard those referred to as miracles, not just signs. So why signs? Signs versus miracles. Why does John decide to say it's a sign and not just a miracle? Well, a sign points to something. It points to something very specific. A sign is evidence. A sign is something specific. A sign is pointing to something. It's not just John. I think that John calls them signs because he wants to make sure that we recognize that Jesus isn't just out performing random acts of kindness for people. He's doing much, much more than that. Jesus wasn't just showing off. He wasn't trying to say, look how powerful I am in this moment. He's not trying to say that. He's pointing to something. These signs, these moments, they're not just miracles. They're pointing to Jesus' identity as the Savior of the world. The purpose of these miracles, the purpose of these signs was not for us to become enamored by the miraculous. It's for us to become consumed by the person that the miraculous is pointing to. It's a sign. The purpose was to point people back to who Jesus is, who Jesus said he was, and the work that he was doing. So, with all of that set up, with all of that said, let's take a look at the first sign that John records. And this is the sign when Jesus turns water into wine. Now, maybe you've heard that before. This is kind of a fun miracle, kind of a fun sign. And so just to kind of set the stage, this is early in John's account. This is early in Jesus' ministry. And he's already, some of the disciples have already been like, hey, I think you might be the Messiah. I think you might be the Son of God. And Jesus is like, hey, let's just keep that quiet for now. It's not my time yet. And Jesus and the disciples find themselves at a wedding. And starts in John chapter 2, verse 1. It says, on the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee, and Jesus' mother was there. We all know Mary. Mary was definitely involved in this wedding. We'll find later that she had a serious stake in the planning and hosting of this wedding. If you've ever planned a wedding, you know that that's a huge weight. That's a huge responsibility to take on. And so Mary's involved in this, and she's a significant part. But Mary's not the only one there. It says, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Thus, it's safe to assume that Jesus was there, and that John was there, and that John was watching and was aware of what is about to happen, which is why he records it. So it continues. It says, when the wine was gone, if you've ever been to a wedding and the wines ran out, you know that that's a big problem. I worked in an event center for a little while, and whenever the wine or the beer would run out, there was a little bit of chaos, and everyone kind of freaked out for a minute. I don't know why that is, but it's a 2,000-year-old problem. It's a problem today. It was a problem then. So when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother, look what she does. Jesus' mother said to him, hey, they have no more wine. They have no more wine. And this is kind of where we realize Mary had some stake in this, because she's like, there's no more wine, it's a problem, and I need to be a part of solving this. So this is interesting, because in this moment, when Mary has a problem, she turns to her son, Jesus. And I'm wondering, like, why in the world, when the wine's gone, does she turn to Jesus and say, solve this problem? I don't know what it's like to grow up with Jesus in the house, but I mean, has this problem happened before where, Mary's like, hey, shoot, we're out of paprika. Fred Meyer's is closed. Click list is crazy. Jesus, I'm going to turn my back. Can you just do that thing? I won't tell anyone. I won't talk about it. Just, we need paprika. I'm going to turn my back. I'll come back and it'll be fine. I don't know why Mary turns to Jesus in this moment. But Jesus responds, and his response is actually hilarious. He says, woman. That's when dad backhands the son, and he never says it again. I would not recommend trying this at home. It's not going to work out. In that moment, it sounds like Jesus is being disrespectful. But if you go back and look at the original language, this is a statement of respect. This is dearest woman. This is my woman. This is a sign of honor and respect. And Jesus says, woman, why do you involve me? Why, what are you bringing me? I'm just a guest here. Why do you involve me? I know I did the paprika thing, but why me? Jesus replied. He says, my hour has not yet come. Mom, I came to save the world, not weddings. So, but look at who asks. When mom asks her son to do something, this is our hope, they do it. And so his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. Mary walks off, trusting that her son will take care of the problem, will take care of the situation. And this is so interesting because you got to wonder, why water into wine first, John? If these signs mean something, why would you start with this one? I mean, think about it. If Mary's a good wedding planner and the servants are honorable, the guests have no clue the wine has run out yet. And if Jesus turns water into wine and the guests continue to get wine, the guests wouldn't know anything about this. This was like a little private, secret, little miraculous thing that happened. It wasn't a public thing, more than likely. It was something that happened in the background that a few knew about. So why would John start here? Well, let's continue the story. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. So Jesus turns and he sees these stone jars that are used to cleanse people from their sins. In the temple model and the sacrificial system that the Jews were exercising at the time, these were precious pieces to the system that saved people from their sins in its current state. It's interesting that Jesus would use these because this system that these stone jars represent is the very system that Jesus came to replace. The system that cleansed people from their sins is the system that Jesus came to perfect, to complete. It's that perhaps what he's about to do is not just a miracle. It's not just to save his mom's face. It's to show that he's come to replace the temporary model for dealing with sin with a permanent one, a permanent payment, a permanent cancellation of our debt that sin has caused us. Perhaps in this moment, Jesus is illustrating the expiration of the old system and proclaiming the beginning of the brand new one. So Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the very brim. They filled the empty jars with what they were normally filled with. And he said, I'm going to make the contents of this jar better. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. John doesn't even state the miracle. He just talks about the result of it. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and he said this, everyone brings out the choice wine first and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. Look, after everybody's drunk, nobody cares the quality of the wine, so you usually just bring the crappy stuff out last. But Oops. But you have saved the best till now. Normally, the good stuff comes first. Make the first impression the best. But Jesus brings the best out later. And while that happened at this wedding, God has done the same thing for us. The old system, performed in temples for centuries, that was founded on the temple system and the sacrificial system and the law handed down to Moses, was a shadow. It was a piece. It was an ode to what would come. It was not perfect. It was not complete. And Jesus, as he comes into the world and begins his ministry, begins by announcing that the old is gone and the new has come. That what was not perfect and incomplete is now made perfect and complete through me. You've saved the best till now. And in the same way that the first wine set the table for the best wine, the nation of Israel and the temple system and the law set the table for Jesus to show up and to bring something completely new, something that was complete, something that was beautiful. The best was saved for last. And perhaps in this moment, this event was more than a miracle. It was a sign. It was a sign pointing to something, rather to someone significant, to someone that would change time, that would change the world, that would change hearts and minds, would free people from brokenness and from hurt, would mend relationships that seem unmendable, that would create life instead of death, that would create life out of death. It was pointing to someone. And John says it in the next verse. He says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first, not the last, the first of the signs. It was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. And his disciples believed, not in the miraculous, but in the person of Jesus. It was the first of the signs which revealed who he said he was. They believed, the disciples believed in the person of Jesus. They had faith in Jesus. They believed because they saw. They believed because they experienced. They believed because there was a reason to believe. There was something constant, something concrete, something reliable, something real. Now, unlike John, our faith doesn't come as much from seeing as it did for him. They saw Jesus physically. They were there. And you may argue with me, and that's okay. You may say, hey, I saw this thing happen, or I saw this event, and now I'm starting to believe, or that was kind of the catalyst of my faith, or I met someone, and they said this, and they did this, and now I believe, and that's great. That's an incredible starting point. But our faith doesn't just come from seeing. It actually comes from hearing. And today, we are invited to believe what actually happened. We're invited to believe who Jesus actually is, and we're invited to believe by the testimony of those who did see it and wrote it down. People like John, people like Matthew, people like Peter. John saw Jesus, he did life with Jesus, he experienced Jesus, and then he wrote it so that we could hear it, so that we could see it, so that we could believe. And today, we get to hear from his perspective who Jesus was and who Jesus still is. To which John would respond, who's Jesus? John would say, he's the Word. He's the Word that became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Not just us. John's talking about us, Peter, Matthew, Mark. He made his dwelling among us. We saw him physically. He says, we've seen We witnessed it. We've seen his glory that was revealed through the signs. The glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father in heaven, full of grace and full of truth. While John was just a bystander witnessing what Jesus did and who he was, the impact that Jesus' life had on John made it worth it for John to write it all down. It made it worth it for hundreds, if not thousands of people to risk their lives over the course of thousands of years to preserve the story that means so much, that exemplifies the evidence for why we can and should believe and have faith. Not just so that we could know what happened, but so that we could recognize who Jesus is. But these things are written that you, that we may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. And that by believing you and I and we may experience life in his name. So as we journey to Jesus with John over the course of the next several weeks, we have the invitation to believe because of who Jesus is, because of what he did. And we get to witness the signs that point to him. And our belief and our faith, while sometimes it requires us to do things that we're unclear about, what we don't have to be unclear about is who Jesus is and what he says about you. And John reveals that. And our hope, my hope, is that we may believe, not in the signs or the wonders, but in the person of Jesus. And that because of that, we may experience full, true, abundant life in his name. Let me pray. God, thank you for your grace, your life. God, your love. God, thank you for sending your Son to do a great work to prove your love for us. God, help us to see it. Help us to experience it. Help us to know it. God, help us to hear with open ears and open hearts who we are because of you. And God, I pray that you would give us faith and belief. God, that you would grow our faith, that you would grow our belief as we journey closer to Jesus each and every day. And God, I pray that you would give us the sight to see what you're saying and what you're doing still today. In Jesus' name. Amen. So as we continue our journey with John through the life of Jesus, I want to invite you to come back, to continue engaging with this content online or here in person. Bring a friend, invite a friend online, and join us next week for part 2 of Bystander. Before we get there, though, let's spend some time just closing and singing worship to God and being reminded of who he is in our lives. Let's stand together and sing.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, oh, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me, yeah. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you gave yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless your foe. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. Oh, you have been so, so good to me. All my days, when I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. Oh, you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you gave yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Come on, do you believe that this morning? There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, you're coming after me. There's no shadow. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you gave yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Hey, God bless you, branches. We look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next Sunday.